Dai Manuel is someone who takes the bull by the horns, lives life to the fullest, and who's not interested in leading by the example of his power, but rather the power of his example. He's a super dad who's dating his wife, who has a contagious personality, and he's on a mission to positively impact 1 million role models around the world to live a functionally fit life through education, encouragement, and community. The sought after life coach took some time to join me this week to discuss the lessons he's learned in his personal life through lived experience and the lessons he's hoping to pass down to the next generation. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, just before we get started, I want to thank you very much for doing this for me. It's most
Oh, thank
appreciated.
you. Oh, Kevin, likewise. I always love these opportunities, one to meet new cool people and make a new friend. But also I'm just always honored for the opportunity to be connected and to just, share real life stories that are well, I like to think will benefit people, So I appreciate you creating a platform that allows for that. That's just awesome.
Absolutely. From one Canadian to the other, Di, I want to welcome you to the show, and I'm excited to learn all about your professional, personal life and the mission that you're on in life as well. So great to see you this afternoon, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Kevin. Like I said, appreciate being here too, and excited for our conversation today.
So, Di, I know that you're on a mission to help 1 million role models from across the globe find their own sort of happiness and functional reality in life. So, I'm wondering if I can start you off by asking, why is this mission so important to you?
Oh, wow. Great question, Kevin. I think back on my own life and a lot of the challenges that I've been presented with at various periods. And I think about myself and sort of what I did in those situations. And, because it was really easy to have that defeatist mindset or just to give up or to just say, I can't, and just, turn around and go a different direction. But rather than doing that, I did look at what I could do that was within my means, but also I looked at who was around me. Who are the people that I knew or knew of that were doing things that were in areas that I wanted to get better in or to improve in. And as an example, like at 14, I was morbidly obese. I was a really big kid. And it didn't happen overnight. Like from the age of 9 to 14, I learned to deal with my emotions and some of the stresses that I had in life and coped with it by eating certain foods and playing video games. So you do that long enough and you do it often enough, well, my life changed. My lifestyle was very reflective of the state of unhealth I eventually got myself to. And, one day something flipped in my mind and I decided that I wanted to change my situation. I wanted to get a little bit healthier. So I remember going to the library, getting books out on fitness and nutrition. My kids laugh because they're like, why don't you just Google it, Dad? And I'm like, well, I'm older than Google. When I was a teenager, there was no Google. And those books and then the people that I met at my gym and also the people that were friends, my parents that were living healthier, more active lifestyles. And I saw that in them. And so I reached out a hand and I asked for help. And fortunately for me, they were willing to stretch their hand back and give me a hand. And ultimately they were role modeling the actions that I could be doing to see certain changes in my own life. And so that was my first introduction to coaching and to role models and mentors. And I want to be on the other end of that now. I want to help others the way that people help me throughout my life. And that's where that idea of trying to empower a million role models around the world, because if they're role modeling certain habits and lifestyles and mindsets, and now inspiring more role models, man, that's how we create massive shifts and big changes.
And tell me, how do you think that evolution in your own personal lives has affected the person you are today?
Well, I have to admit that at periods of my life, I've been very fixed mindset, and that idea that I'd limit myself based on the way I believed, or based on what I believed to be the opportunities or lack thereof in my life, and just sort of blaming myself or blaming others and blaming my situation, blaming my parents, like just, lots of pointing fingers. And when I think about some of the things that I've struggled through or have challenged me, or have reinforced that negative way of looking at myself, I realized that if I didn't change the inputs, like what I was feeding my mind with, it would be a bigger struggle. And chances are, I don't think I ever would have been able to sustain any permanent change in my life. And so all these little struggles, I mean, we all have them. We all have them. We all have moments in our lives that push on us, and they can push pretty hard. And I'm sure, Kevin, you've had many of these moments in your own life, and just like what you shared with me, based on, like, look at what we're all dealing with COVID, right? Like it's a big challenge right now. So we can either just give up and think about all the things that we can't do, or we try to reframe our perspective, our mind, and our lifestyle to really embrace the things that we still can do, and the things that still can create positive shifts or adaptation, or, as you said earlier, evolution. Because evolution, based on the research by Darwin and a lot of other scientists, big changes happen when we find ourselves in states of stress. Like, that's what causes that adaptation. We evolve, we learn to deal with the stress and yet surpass it and survive it. So it's this natural evolution. Like, I think about all these vaccines that are going to start pumping out next year. Well, there's another wave of evolving, right? People are going to be developing an immunity to this virus called the COVID-19. So it's interesting. It runs all over the place, and I guess it's, rather than fighting it, I just learned how to embrace it, Kevin. That's the real bit I want to leave you with there.
And I know that you say that you know the struggle of the juggle and sort of maintaining your own personal fitness appearance and making your personal fitness a priority. So I wonder, what would be your advice to anyone watching this that may be struggling in those areas that may
Hmm.
need a little bit of inspiration?
Well, I guess, you know, I know for myself and some of my clients that I've worked with, like, it's sometimes it's the all or nothing mentality that holds us back. You know what I mean? It's like, well, like, I used to be of the belief that if I couldn't go to the gym and work out for at least an hour to 90 minutes, there's no point in me going. Like, that was my mindset. I used to think, if I can't do at least that 60 to 90 minutes, there's no point in me even going to the gym or working out. It just, I won't get any benefit. So, that would show up in my life, not only in that area, but other areas too. I would start noticing that belief, or this limiting belief, that if I couldn't do everything the way I wanted to do it, then there's no point in even trying. And so I would give up before I even started. And I think a big part of healthy living, it's not a matter of limiting ourselves or saying no to a bunch of things, because no one wants to say no. No one wants to say, I can't do that, or don't have that, or, like, that is so prescriptive, and it's very limiting. It feels like we're in a tight little box and we don't have a lot of room to move or grow. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of us might start things and then we give up on them, because we've been so restrictive on what we allow ourselves to do or do not. So my words of advice, or my invitation to people, is, rather than thinking about all the things that you may not be able to do, just look at the things every day that you can do. And they don't have to be major things. It's often the smallest of things, like even just maybe introducing a salad every day, or a green smoothie, You know, just that little thing of adding that extra bit of nutrition into your diet has a positive effect once you've done it consistently over time. Just like exercise. You know, you go to the gym once, it's not like you're done and you don't have to ever work out again. It's one of those things you got to keep doing, right? And so it's this lifestyle we're trying to adapt in, but it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. It just has to be what works for you and what you can maintain consistently. And you know, every little bit counts. It all counts. And once, just to close off on that question, Kevin, which, you know, if you think about regret and how it shows up in our lives, sometimes, and I know for myself too, like if I did something that, say I was on a diet because I wanted to lose a bunch of weight, right? And I said, well, I can't eat that because that is not on my diet. So no, it's a no, 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 no. So you keep pushing things away. It's almost like you're running away from certain things because you don't trust yourself being able to just say no. So you don't even, you stop showing up, right? And when we think about that action of saying no, it's very negative, and it reinforces this negative pattern, this belief that I just can't do all these things. And over time, that creates this very uneasy feeling, at least what I've experienced. And I think that's what ultimately breaks us down eventually, because we're like, man, this is just not fun. This is not fun. Why would I want to do this? You know? And so we become so restrictive trying to lose all this weight. And eventually we hit a point where we just didn't really learn anything at all. All we learned was how to be very disciplined and say no a lot to ourselves and then beat ourselves up if we ever deviated from that. And we didn't really learn a new lifestyle because we weren't having fun. So that all of a sudden now you have this negative association with losing weight. And it's like, why bother trying to lose weight? It's just awful. I don't enjoy it. I don't have fun. So there's a disconnect. We're not really connected or invested in the results any longer. And you know, we don't think about what life may be like if we just start to see some improvements in our physicality, how we feel, how our body moves, how we manage stress, how food makes us feel. Because at the end of the day, and think about this, Kevin, say you have a salad every day. I've never had somebody message me and say, Dai, you know what? I had a salad for lunch today with some salmon on it. I really regret doing that. Like, no one ever says, I regret having salad. No one says, I regret I worked out today. I really regret doing that. Like, so we have to ask ourselves, if we never regret certain things in our life when we do them, why don't we do them more consistently? You know, that's my question to people. It's like, why not? You know, what's holding us back? And I think that's that mindset piece, that commitment to oneself. And sometimes it's just trusting a process and doing it and just doing it and trusting that the results will come. But that's where patience comes in.
And I know for you throughout the scope of your career, you've been a Toastmaster, an author, and digital thought leader, and even been on the executive level for a retail company. So I'm wondering, if you look at the scope of your professional career, what do you think has been your biggest moment of influence or impact?
Mm, that's a great question, Kevin. Holy smokes. I'm not used to such great questions. These are really, really well thought out. Uh, you know, I think there's been periods. I sort of look at my life as being in seasons. You know, I have sort of my 20s where, man, I just chased my career. You know, I really did. I started having kids young, and you know, I started getting. I was in my committed relationship with my wife too at that time, but my main focus during my 20s was my career. Like it was all about chasing the title, chasing what I believed to be success, and certain things that I used to qualify what I believed was successful. You know, like collecting of stuff, you know, trying to earn more money, try to earn a better title, and I used to feel rather empty at the end of the day, you know, like not satisfied, not fulfilled. And yet I do recall when I start to think back on it, I did provide some impact to some of the people I was working with, but I didn't really feel like I was making a significant dent. I felt I was very ego driven, right? And then I got into my 30s, especially my early 30s, and things started to shift. Right around 33, 34, I started to realize I want to make an impact in the world. You know, I want to start to help others. I want to help them get better in life, or help them with their health, help them with their nutrition, basically be a role model, you know, and also a coach or a mentor to those that I could. And the cool thing is during this period, you know, dating myself, I'm 44 now. So if you go back like 14 years, that's when I started blogging. You know, I hit right around my 30th birthday, I started blogging, and I just started putting content out as social media platforms. I would sign up and I would just start sharing stuff, information to help people. Stuff that I was finding useful for myself. I was like, well, I think others might like this too, so I'll just share it. And uh, over time, I started to realize that compounded, and people started to resonate with some of the things I was sharing, and then people started reaching out, asking questions, and that would inspire me to write more content, right, to answer those questions. And I started to really feel connected, like I was serving a purpose that was much more meaningful to me than what I was achieving in my retail career. And so then, things started to shift, and that's really where that I would say in around the mid 30s and even up to now. Now my big focus the last couple of years has been just on helping people get out of their own way. Helping them realize where some of those belief systems may not be serving them anymore, and it's okay. You can create new ones. Sometimes it takes a little bit of help, a little bit of support, a little bit of Q&A, a lot of introspection and being honest with oneself, but it's really worth it. It may not be easy, but it's always worth it. And so that's where I feel now I'm making a great amount of impact. But, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention my kids. Every day there's an opportunity there to make an impact on the next generation. And I'm doing that, through my kids, obviously trying to provide them with the best growth experience possible in these earlier years. And hopefully that will then lead on to the next generations, and I will make impact through them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and absolutely. And one of my questions for you was, what's the biggest legacy that you hope to leave for your kids? And
Mm.
also, I know that you refer to yourself as dating your wife. So I'm wondering if you could define that term for me and what it means for you. And what's the biggest example you want to set for your kids?
Yeah, I think, it was about 11 years ago. My wife asked me a question that really shifted me. It actually, it rocked my world, to be honest. I used so similar to when I was a teenager and really overweight and unhealthy, I used food and video games and movies, like this. Uh, those were my coping mechanisms. So dealing with emotional stresses or anxiety or anything like that, those are things that would give me some momentary comfort. It would allow me to escape my life, basically. And so I learned early on that I could find things to distract me from those negative emotions, negative feelings. And then eventually I worked through them and I got healthy and I discovered fitness and nutrition and just really living differently. But a lot of my work was external. So I was always focused on the look, the aesthetic, not really doing any internal work. So I was still very good at suppressing emotions and just sucking things up and just putting on the happy, confident face and pretending like nothing's bugging me. And I 11 years ago, I I really my life got quite rocky because I was using alcohol the way I used to use food. And it was my way of escaping some of the stress and anxiety in my life. Those negative emotions is my way of avoiding them and escaping them was with alcohol. And so it started to become a real habit for me. It was my usual way of dealing with stress. And I had a lot of stress. So anytime there was more stress in my life, oh, well, I'll just have another glass of wine, and things will be okay. I can worry about that tomorrow when I wake up. But tonight, I'm going to have some drinks and not think about it. And that became just regular. And then my wife asked me a question one day after she had just reached her wit's end and was no longer going to put up with my behavior because she knew our kids at the time, both under the age of 6, this was not a healthy environment for them to be in. This is not the kind of environment to raise two very young girls and eventually raise them into women being around and having this behavior role model, especially because, as their father, I was their first real male role model in their lives, their first real male figure in their life. And there's lots of backup out there that girls are often attracted to men that remind them of their fathers. And so, when you start thinking about that, it's like, whoa, the guy that I was being, would I want my daughter to end up with that kind of a kind of guy that doesn't return text messages? He'll go out with his friends and not come home until the next morning. I was doing things that were so out of my character and completely out of integrity. and made me feel even worse. And so you can see how this is that downward spiral. So my wife sat me down and she says, Dai, you're not being the kind of man that I know you can be. And I know that you want to be. And more importantly, I want to ask you a question. Are you being the type of man that you would want your daughters to marry? That question just rocked me, Kevin. Like, I was just like, whoa, well, no, I guess, no, I'm not. Because I couldn't argue her on it. I could not defend myself because I knew she was absolutely right. And so it was that moment where I made a commitment to go 1 year, no drinking, to really start focusing on me. But more than that, I was saying no to alcohol, but I was saying yes to myself. I was saying yes to my family. I was saying, yes, this matters to me more than any of that stuff. And that's when the real work began. And now, you ask me about that legacy question. I really feel good that my daughters, especially now at age 15 and 17, soon to be 16 and 18, that I've raised a bar. I've set the bar, and it's not that it's low, and it's not that it's super high and unattainable. I'm human. I've got lots of faults too, but I've set a bar of what it means to respect a woman, what it means to be what I believe, striving to be a great man and great in all areas. And so that's the legacy I want to leave is for them to have that positive representation of what a great man can be and what they deserve. And so that's sort of what's always front of mind for me now, and one of those filters that I use to sort of pass some of my ideas or ideas around things that I may do or not do. It's like, well, is this a good modeled behavior? Is this reflective of who I am and who I want to be and who I'm striving to become? And those are the simple questions that I'm always asking myself.
Absolutely. I always strive to be the best version of myself as well. So I
I love it. I
can
love it.
relate to that. But you said something that piqued my interest with your daughters being sort of getting ready to be thrusted into adulthood
Mm,
and living in this 24/7 news cycle and
yeah.
growing up in this century, I guess.
Mm,
What's the biggest thing that you're hoping your daughters emulate in sort of cutting through the noise and
mm,
the distractions that may be temptations for them?
that's a great question. Again, it's for as long as we've introduced them to, especially like the internet, like search engines and the ability to just have endless amounts of information at their fingertips. And even as we've allowed them to start to explore different social platforms, we wanted to have very open conversation around what this is and to really respect what that is. What is social media? What are these platforms? How does marketing work online? How are these algorithms influencing some of the things that you're typing in and some of the things that they show you? So really trying to help them be aware of what happens when we start to go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, of this online space. And also just a set of the safety side of things too. There's lots of concerns, especially for young girls and young men and just anybody that can be taken advantage of. If someone feels they can, they will. And it's awful to think that there's that in the world, but that's just the world we live in. It is there. And so we are always actively engaging them in conversations around that. And even when it comes to media, talking about, well, if the media only reported positive information and positive stuff, unfortunately, people probably wouldn't tune in as much. And that's sorry to say that, but it seems to be quite true a lot of the time. There's a fair amount of negativity that's always projected through the media, and sometimes it is embellished a little bit, right? It's a little flashy, and it draws us in, and so we want to have these conversations so they are able to at least look at things with a discerning eye. To not take things at face value. And to really think about it and internalize it and interpret it in their own way with their own abilities. And so that's sort of our constant, I guess we could call it a struggle, because there's times they're teens, like, yeah, whatever, mom, whatever, dad, like they're very quick to brush it off. But we've seen them in situations at times where they've been challenged or messages have come in and they're like, I don't know who this is, what's bad. And we've seen them do the right thing, so we know that they're practicing certain behaviors and they are respecting the devices and the technology and this is the world, and they're navigating it in a much more aware and safer fashion. And so that's my thoughts to any parents out there. It's like, you can't hide them from it because they're going to get to it whether you like it or not, you know? So learning how to engage in a conversation that is constructive and positive and looks at both sides of the equation and able to help them come to their own conclusions. That's what we've strived for, and it's what I invite other parents to strive for too.
And I know as a life coach, you sort of model yourself after the five F's. So I'm wondering if you can explain the five F's to me. And what do you think is your biggest legacy as a life coach? Or what's one message as a life coach that you may want someone to take away from today's conversation?
Oh, okay. Well, thanks, Kevin. The five F's are my way of trying to help people understand values. We all have certain values, things that, like, often when I ask somebody, what do you really believe? Like, what do you value in your life? What are certain aspects? Like, for me, one of my values is family. And you can almost call it like a pillar. One of my pillars for my life, like the life that I build, like if I was building a house, I need a rock solid foundation. Well, for me, I believe the foundation's health. Because when you have health, you can do a lot of things, right? When we're not feeling healthy, like, just think about it. If you got the flu and you got a bad fever, I mean, getting out of bed, no way. You don't even think about it. So can you imagine when you have chronic ailment? Like, I have an autoimmune disease. And so there's times where, yeah, I've just got to rest for a few days to allow my immune system to build back up so I can go and attack life again. And so I have a sensitivity and an empathy. I know what that's like to have chronic conditions affecting us. But there's still things that we can do to reinforce that foundation of health. And so that's the foundation. And then on top of that, imagine you've got a foundation. So envision your life like you're building a house. You're going to have four walls and a roof. Okay. It's a really basic house. And so my four walls are some of those F's: fitness, faith, finances, and family. These are things that are very important to me. Some of my core values, and then there's an overarching roof of fun. So that's where those five F's come in. It just helps people sort of get an idea of some of the belief systems that I have. I don't expect people to have the same ones, but they may model some of the same ones. But what are people? I want people to think about their life like a home. They can design it. You can just determine whenever you want to renovate it, but you build something on a solid foundation. Make sure the foundation's looked after. And that's an ongoing everyday thing. You know, that's why I always emphasize the health piece. But the other aspects, there's just areas that I believe to be non-negotiables in my life. And when I say finances, people are like, well, you mean you're driven by money? I'm like, no, but I want to be financially responsible. I don't, I know we live in an economy, like a global economy, where you do need some money to be able to do certain things, to have certain things like food. Like, I don't live off the grid. I don't have a farm. I don't have all that experience. So I need to purchase the food and I need to pay for like the rent or the mortgage. And those are aspects to being financially responsible. I want to be financially healthy. Right. And I, so that's where that health aspect comes back in. So being financially fit, being psychologically fit, emotionally fit. So that's sort of where some of my philosophies come in. And that's something that I published in my book. I speak to this quite often. So if you're asking me, sort of what is some of those key messages I want to be known for or remembered for, definitely this sort of analogy of helping people frame in their own minds or design what they imagine to be their life so they can really start to live into that purposefully, like consciously making decisions that reinforce the walls. Maybe change the roof, put on some solar panels, like whatever. You can start to envision this life and you feel more in control, or at least more engaged with it, especially in the right now. And I think that's really what I'd like people to take away.
And I wanted to end the interview by having a little fun, if you didn't mind. So
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know, for you, what's the best part about being a Canadian and living in Vancouver?
Well, I grew up in Ontario in a small town called Bowmanville. And Bowmanville's just outside of a town called Oshawa. A lot of people know Oshawa because GM's got a big footprint there, and General Motors makes a lot of vehicles there. And that's where my dad lived. My mom lived in Bowmanville after they separated and divorced. And so I loved growing up there, but I then hit 18 and graduated high school, moved to Vancouver because I wanted the mountains, I wanted the ocean. And for those that have been to Vancouver, you only have to come here once to understand the attraction and why people love Vancouver. I love being Canadian above all else. I love our country. I love the fact that we have such a cosmopolitan country. You know what I mean? Like, we have all different races, we have all different aspects of cultures that have come together to create the Canadian landscape. And I absolutely love it. And I love the fact that we get 4 seasons, like, I do enjoy that. I don't always like winter, but for the most part, I like having that seasonality. And so those are some of the things that I love the most. But at the end of the day, when you're Canadian, there's not much to complain about.
Fantastic. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, Di, how do they do that?
Just if you know how to spell my name, you can find me pretty much everywhere. So Dai Manuel, Daimanuel, first name Dai, Welsh name for David. Manuel's Portuguese. And so I always joke with people, yeah, I've got a Welsh first name, Portuguese last name, but I am Canadian. And if you can type that into any social platform or even into Google, you'll find my website, which is daimanuel.com. And I always tell people, like, just reach out. I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook. You send me a private message, I respond. It's me you get. Just say, hey, I heard you on Kevin's podcast. It was great. And this is what my house looks like. I'd love to know, what are some of your core values? Just let me know. Like, that's how we start a conversation. That's how we connect. And that's how we all grow together, So that's the easiest way to get a hold of me. Just learn how to spell my name.
That's as a journalist, I learned how to spell a lot of names for sure, and I practiced yours a couple of times just to make sure that I got it right. Right, but all kidding aside, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I want to thank you for a revealing and consequential conversation, and for joining me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for creating a platform that's just it's able to catalog such amazing stories and inspiring people, and just man, just for creating the opportunity for people to expand their own belief systems. And I just want to commend you for what you do. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're most welcome, and thank you for the kind words and for making some time for me this afternoon. And I want to wish you the best of luck in any current and future endeavors, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. If you're ever out in Vancouver, let me know, because we got to go out. We'll grab some coffee, go for a walk on the seawall. It'd be awesome.
Just make sure it's not raining, though.
Yeah, that's right. I'll put in a call for you.
Fantastic. Have a great day, and thanks for your time, buddy.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll see you again soon.
Fantastic. Dai, we're done. That was terrific.